Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not to Comic Book. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about episode 11, the next episode of Van Helsing. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, I thought it was really interesting, first and foremost, like Jack and Ivory's situation. I thought like we would have gotten more with their journey, but it's like, nah, they happened to show up at the town that Axel and Violet were at, but they had missed him by a couple days, so they're a little bit ahead. I'm just surprised at all. I would have expected we'd have gotten some type of, what they were up to, but I guess it's like, well, I guess things were somewhat smooth sailing for them. I guess we also didn't get any, because I would have expected us to have like more time with them having one-on-one time, because since being reunited, they haven't had too much time together. Like, the episode Julius died and the episode Jack came back was like the only time they had together, because they were immediately separated in the minds, and then they went, they're like together again. But whatever, I guess maybe that's something we'll kind of focus on a little bit more in the future. But obviously they're meeting up with the guy trying to like, he's like, oh, I know a way to get you inside of DC, but he says like it's going to be a price, and he wanted like Ivory Sword was like, yeah, that's not going to happen, buddy. Nah. Which I even love that he's nerding out. He's like, is that folded steel? Like, samurai style. And they're just like, you could be a part about saving the world. He's like, I'm not here to be a superhero. So it's like everyone's looking out for themselves, But Biggs shows up and he's like, yo, yeah, I know you're Jack and Ivory, right? Axel sent me, and it's like, right, so I don't know all the plan, but the fact of the matter is I know a way to get you inside the DC. So from what we know, they found their way inside DC. We didn't see them this episode, so we have no idea what they're up to, what challenges they might have come across. But it is interesting because the moment you do see an outside perspective, I don't know whether it's just like the filmed footage they use, because the moment they get inside, it's like, right, there's not too many cars or people around, even though like it seemed like DC was lively. I'm like, because even then, it's still like, it's not nearly as dilapidated as like the rest of the world is. I mean, or at least what we've seen in the US. I'm like, oh, it's not run down. Everything's kind of pristine. I mean, people have been kind of living the regular, like, I mean, I guess the people who were in DC were fortunate, because I doubt like many outsiders were able to find their way inside DC. I mean, to be fair, Denver was kind of in a very similar spot, but at least it was welcoming people in. Doesn't seem like DC was in the same regard. It makes sense. This is kind of just, once again, seat of governmental power, so it makes sense that you wouldn't be able to just kind of go in willy-nilly. But, yeah, it is kind of weird just seeing like, oh, just like everyday life. We haven't experienced that since Denver, but even that was kind of a facade to a certain extent, This seems like this might be the true blue situation, but then we have people protesting about like obviously the way the president's been acting recently, and obviously it's about like the orange gas. It's like, I guess she's trying to like perpetuate that to be like, oh yeah, like it's here, so I got to be more strict because it's coming this way. But it's like, nah, reports are saying it's going to the west, which once again, I'm surprised that hasn't been a bigger issue this season. Maybe it'll come out to be a bigger thing in the final 2 episodes, but it's like, it's turned into a thing from time to time, but it has not been the massive threat I would have assumed it would have been. It's just been like sporadically, which I don't know, I just found that interesting. You would have thought like, especially the way they were setting that up last season, I mean, who knows? Maybe they shifted a lot because of the pandemic, but all like not just production-wise, but also like storytelling-wise. Like maybe it would have hit a little too close to home, so maybe that's why they didn't utilize it as much as maybe they were originally going to, or maybe this was always a plan to utilize it intermediately like this. I feel like it has to come, like it's been sprinkled in here and there. We've seen a few mutations, but that's about it. I would assume it in itself is going to help in some regard. I mean, it's poisonous to humans, sure, but it kills like 9 out of 10 vampires, so I don't know. So that's just kind of my thought process, guys. It's something you kind of forget about until people bring up, and until it comes up, you're like, oh, right, that's still out there, and that's still kind of an issue. It just, like I said, doesn't come up that often. But what was really interesting, though, is that obviously a police officer stopping Ivory, which I'm like, wow, just like society a post-apocalyptic world where like society's still like kind of out and about doing its thing. It's just so weird and crazy to see like that. It's like, oh yeah, here's an actual police officer. Like, really? I mean, I guess you got to maintain law and order. It's just crazy to think about considering the outside world, but it's like, well, the outside world is the outside world. This is DC, so it's a little different. But Jack ended up getting a note, but it wasn't from Axel or Violet. It was from Vanessa. I guess, like, Axel let her, like, I guess let Vanessa know, or probably when she read his mind, knew what was what. So left a note for Jack or Ivory if they got there. And then that guy's like, oh, let me help you. I'm part of the resistance. I'm like, wait, what resistance? But it's like, right, the military person that helped Ivory and Violet escape Fort Collins earlier in the season, like, she's back again. It's like, oh, you're part of the resistance. Interesting. And it's like, okay. So... And then obviously it's like this guy is like, oh, I know who you are. It's like, how do you know? It's like, right, he's from a lineage of the Roma. It's like, yeah, we know about the 2 Jack Van Helsings. It's like, what do you mean 2? It's like, well, there's you, the one that came back in time. It's like, yeah, that was me. And the other one is like, wait, Olivia's wait, what? And just like her realizing like, holy crap. It is interesting to think about how that all worked out. Once again, it does seem like things shifted from what they were supposed to be, but it does seem like a lot of what went... It makes you wonder what went down originally. If this is the altered history that Jack made, and it seems like the only thing she really changed was stripping the Dark One of some of her power. Like, once again, the time travel rules in this are weird. Because it didn't affect the full timeline, only enough of it to be like... Oh, only the present was affected. Everything else kind of stayed the same. Like the ripple effect didn't like bounce throughout the rest of the time. Like it hit present day and that was it. Once again, I mean, cause we're not just dealing with regular time travel. We're dealing with magical time travel. So that's a little different for what would be considered like quote unquote science fictional time travel. So the rules are different, I'm sure. Well, that was my whole thing at like the beginning of the season and everything. But makes you want the whole point. I was like, so does that mean like the Van Helsing bloodline always started with Olivia's baby, which makes that ironic that Olivia is the host of the Dark One, and it's like she was she essentially birthed the beginning of the Van Helsing bloodline. So, and for Jack, it's like, oh, that my ancestor was Olivia's baby. So that's super weird. It's like, right, the child of your ultimate enemy gave birth to the bloodline you belong to. It's kind of crazy. I mean, to be fair, when you actually think about it, who was your dad? One of the Dark One's brides. So it's like, well, stranger things have happened, I guess. But obviously the plan is to get to Bathory. Like, that's the need to read the spell, remove the Dark One's power, neutralize it at the very least. So, at the same time, the other vampire leaders in the U.S. are gathered, and it's like, oh, it's interesting to go here a little bit, because it's like, oh yeah, you ran things for a decade. I was like, it hasn't been a decade. Oh, you were running things before the Rising, like you were doing your backdoor dealings and stuff in the shadows, and now you're able to kind of continue running things now that you're no longer in the shadows. So it's like, I had a feeling like one of them, like the person that was like, oh, I moved from place to place. I was like, that's someone in disguise, isn't it? Because I was like, no, it's not Vanessa. We know she's looking like Nina, but I'm like, who is that? I was like, is it the Dark One? I was wondering, could it be Bathory? But it's like, nah, Bathory's over there. And she's like, oh, because one of the dudes, was it Frederick, was kind of like, oh, like the Dark One is weakened. This whole situation presents itself as kind of an opportunity, a grab for power. But then Bathory is like, oh, you probably shouldn't be listening to all those rumors and stuff like that. And then the Dark One reveals it. It's like, oh, my lord, sorry. It's like, no, she's like, okay, it's like your ambition and everything. I was like, oh, like you are my children, so it's understandable that your ambition would be what it is. Because, oh, look at all that you were able to accomplish while I was locked up. And she was like, also showcases just how petty the Dark One is. The fact is that she was just so like, you gathered all this power, but it's like, oh, that's fine and dandy, but the fact is you stand here and mock me, claim that I'm weak, let me show you how weak I am, and proceeded to murder everyone in the room. Which even Bathory is like, why'd you do that? It's like, they thought I was weak. It's like, are you trying to challenge me too, Bathory? It's like, of course not. Because it's like, I guess for Bathory, it's like, if they were actual traitors, that's one thing, but they were your loyal servants, because Bathory knows at any point in time she could get dropped. You know, it's like, right, like, because she's always teetering on the fence, because she always kind of has been failing the Dark One. Even before the Dark One came back, she was kind of failing her, and even in the whole thing of like, right, you resurrected me alone. What about the rest of my brides? Where's Michaela? Where's Willem? And it's like, well, you try to gain my favor on your own, and then even subsequently, you've just kind of failed me. Even after you succeeded, you've still kind of been failing me a little bit. So, but, you know, it's just interesting to see Bathory like, whoa. I guess it's because it's like, right, if they can get it, like, I'm not in the best position. I'm not always 100% in the Dark One's favor, so she got a little nervous. And lo and behold, who starts strolling in after all the death and destruction? None other than Nina. And it's like, weren't you supposed to die? It's like, yeah, but I came here with, I came here with the Van Helsing's blood and everything. Yeah, I'm here to basically submit to you. It's like, which obviously Bathory was like, what? No, you can't trust her, blah, 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 blah. It's like, to be fair, Bathory is not big. Well, Willem did betray them and everything, but also Bathory is like, she doesn't want to take the chance. It's like, she's already had to deal for centuries with competition with Michaela and Willem. And it's like, especially because, let's not forget, Dracula was trying to make Vanessa one of her brides last season as well. So Bathory was like, no, you're supposed to be mine alone. As Dracula brings up later on, it's like, right, Bathory's devotion is like no other. Like, because I feel like even Michaela's was never that obsessed with well, I guess you could make the argument she's the one that started all this. She set all that in motion because she was the one trying to bring out the Dark One. So to a certain extent, she has always been that obsessed, but well, Michaela's more so like, she always made it seem like she was kind of standing on equal ground. Bathory doesn't. Bathory feels like, I'm just a lowly servant. I'll do whatever you want. Like, let's face it. Bathory seems like she's whipped, so that's why I'm like, I think that's just, it's such an interest. Well, she's kind of like the submissive one in a relationship. I guess Michaela was kind of more the dom, to a certain extent. It wasn't equal footing. It's just interesting to think about. I never really gave it too much thought until like more recently, but the Dark One has her reservations about Nina as well. But it's like, you're offering me this blood, and it's like, yep, it's a Van Helsing's blood. Fine, want me to test it out? Here, Frederick, and he turns human, and it's like, well, yes. The only true thing she could be saying is that the blood is a Van Helsing's, but beyond that, we don't know anything about her story. So it's pretty dope how really into character Vanessa got. I guess it's because I see through Axel's memory, she knew exactly how to act like Nina and just nailed it. Personality-wise and everything. So that was just so good, and just kind of like, yeah, just, kicking back, like, yeah, this is my spot and everything, and Bathory's like, you sit there, and it's like, fine. It's just like the jealousy back and forth, like, Bathory giving her the shade eyes, like, eyes of disgust, like, ugh. Give the stink eye is more appropriate. So I was like, that's so interesting, and like, it's not just a Dark One, it's petty. Bathory being jealous and petty is also interesting, too. But, obviously, Vanessa overhears the conversation between the Dark One and Bathory about, Jack, she's made her trip back from the past. Well, the fact is, my powers here, like, don't worry, we'll kill her, bring her head to you, and you'll get your power back. Because with her full power, she'll be able to kind of bring humanity to its knees, is kind of what she's saying. Which actually begs the question, she is a lot weaker than you would think then. If she would need, I guess like her full power would be necessary to like do some world domination level stuff. She can do quite a bit now with the fraction she's gotten back, but not worldwide effects like she would want to kind of consume that world in darkness, so. But Vanessa goes and meets with Jack, and I thought it was pretty dope. Like, this is their first reunion. Like, they didn't have much time in the Dark Realm, but now it's like, we had this time together, and it's like, right, because Vanessa brought up something I still never really thought. It's one of those things, like, right, until the show points it out, I feel so stupid, because I never thought about that. It's like, right, the elder bit her, didn't turn human, didn't die, it was fine. In fact, she's actually the one that changed because of the bite. But, so for her, it's like, even I don't know what would happen if I tried to bite the Dark One, if I'd even be able to end this. But you guys were specially engineered by Hansen to kind of, finish this. So, but obviously, the fact is that they're kind of all about this, and Vanessa's, so proud of, like, it's like, you guys are something else, that, like, Ivory and Violet. And Jack is like, we kind of got it from you. She's like, part of it you got from me, but the rest is just your own courage. You've kind of, that courage in its own right, it's something that comes from you alone. So But obviously, it's her motherly instincts kicking in, because it's like, right, like she wanted to come to make sure her daughter was okay, and it's like make sure her children are okay. As 2 episodes ago, episode 9, kind of, relenting on, like, well, thinking back on the whole Dylan thing. I'm sure, like, it makes her want to protect Jack and Violet that much more. It's like, these are my daughters. I already feel like I failed, sadly, one daughter. I don't want to fail them. Especially, she also heard about what Violet did. It's like, I think for so long she had fought off the darkness and couldn't control it, but I think to hear that, yeah, Violet might have been like, have struggled with it, but she was able to consume it and then spit it back out. And it's like, oh, because I think for Vanessa, it's like, if I was in that position, I might not have been able to do that. It just shows you like how badass and awesome my kids are. It's like, it's cool. And just seeing that look on her face, like a concerned mother, because especially Jack being like, when this is all said and done, we'll find each other, And Vanessa's got that look on her face because I think she's concerned, but also worried that at the very least, she wants to make sure they make it out of this. Whether she'll make it out is a whole other story, but I think first and foremost, it's like the concern for her children, So she comes back, and I love the whole Bathory and everything. I was about to say, like, Bathory's not going to question it, but I guess it's like, right, I guess there are different vampires with special abilities and stuff like that, so another with like magic, I guess, shouldn't be too much of a surprise. I guess you wouldn't jump immediately to Vanessa, because even Vanessa didn't have those powers, so why would you jump to the conclusions it's her? Because it's like, oh, you're not the lowly vampire I thought you were. So that kind of turns into a tit for tat type of situation, and it's like, I just love Bathory being so frustrated, walking away and closing the door on Nina, and she's opening the door. It's just so fun. I even love the Dark One, like, children, please. There's no need to fight over me. It's like, look at the circumstance, like, that scene in itself. I'm like, children, don't fight over me. There's enough of me to go around, But, Nina's like, hey, I know where the Van Helsing is. I'll bring the vial to you. You be back at full strength, so let's go. And Bathory's like, no, send me. And it's like, fine, she can come along, but I'm not going to look after you. But the Dark One's like, no, you're staying. She's like, what? No, this is mine. No, you're going to defy me? You're staying. And so Bathory goes along, which wasn't part of the plan. Vanessa was going to try and lead her there just to make sure that she was kind of stopped so that Jack could bite her. Sadly, she shows up and wrecks shop. Luckily, she has a military unit with her and proceeds to kill everybody. Well, mostly everybody. The lady from Fort Collins ended up getting away, it seems like, as well as some other people getting wounded. Poor guy. Like, because we just ran into, like, the pastor, like, back in episode 7, and he died that very episode. We get introduced to this other dude who's a Roma, and it's like, oh, he's dead already, too. It's like, Jesus, poor bastards. But I guess for them, it's like, right, we're giving our life because we believe in this cause. We're fighting for this cause. So, if any death, as long as it proves useful in the end. I thought was really interesting is the... once again, she said it herself, she picked up a trick or two, and so it's not only can she do some stuff like Bathory as well as the Dark One, probably not to the extent, like, because obviously the Dark One's got access to a lot more darkness and power, like, I doubt Vanessa would be able to do everything she can do, but she pulled a Bathory and took control of some of the other soldiers, and they start lighting Bathory up, and I love in that moment, she pulls a Matrix and stops all the bullets. I was like, oh, that's sick, especially with the camera spin and everything. I was like, oh, that's actually really sick. And then, like, she fires all the bullets back at them. Then Ivory comes in with the sword spear throw and ends up stabbing her, and ultimately Jack is able to bite her. So it does work. But then Bathory is speaking... Because I think when she went back in time, it basically gave... Because that's why everyone was technically speaking English, even though they were in Transylvania. It's... she was speaking Romani back then. It's kind of like, oh, like... It's kind of that thing of like, oh, what, you guys speak good English. It's like, what do you talk... I think... Did they reference that? I don't remember if they referenced that or not. It's almost like, it's a weird reference to make, but it's kind of like the, doesn't the TARDIS act as like a, universal translator? Or, I think so. I think access to the TARDIS ends up in the Doctor Who. I think it acts as a universal translator. I could be wrong. But I think that spell kind of made it so that, right, she just automatically spoke the language without even realizing she's speaking the language. But now Bathory, like... It's like, oh, like, they're present day and Bathory's speaking Romani, and neither Jack nor Ivory can speak it. So I think that's what it is. Plus, so that's why, like, I think also, you can't forget, Bathory was like that for centuries. Because I also have to think about it, too. Like, this is the oldest vampire I think we're seeing get changed back. Because obviously she's older than Ivory, but definitely. So it's like, this is like the oldest vampire we've seen turn back. She was kind of a special case and everything. But what was really interesting, too, is like when the Dark One like felt her presence. It's like, no, she's gone. It's actually interesting. Like I said, you kind of had her whipped, and you kind of were an abusive significant other. The fact is that it's like, oh, now that she's gone, you can no longer feel her. Which is also interesting, too, because remember, it's like, right, that's the last of your brides, too. Like, without that connection you felt for so long is now gone. Like, all of your brides are gone from your grasp now. But, and in that moment, you know, it's like, oh, like, she grabs Vanessa, still looking like Nina, and it's like, oh, you're the one responsible. You sent her dead for failure. It's like, oh, you know, oh, you brought the Van Helsing blood for the trap. It's like, no. It kind of reveals stuff. It's like, it's actually your fault. You left me in the dark room to break me, and I came back stronger. And it's like, you can't harm me. It's like, won't know till we'll find out. And in that moment, she bites her. It's like, what that will do, I don't know. She screams out in pain. It probably won't cure her. I wonder would it be enough, like, maybe by doing that, you know, Jack was able to bite her and strip out some of her power. To be fair, Jack and Violet are a little different, but I'm wondering if Vanessa, with all her power-ups and everything, like the multipliers that have been stacking over the course of the series, newfound darkness powers and everything, will it be enough to draw out some of that power herself? She might be able to even the playing field a little bit. The Dark One's still powerful, but she has been severely weakened, so interesting place to leave off the episode. I am curious to really find out. Obviously, I'll get answers potentially next episode. But with that, like I said, is there going to be any remedy to that Bathory thing? Like, you probably have to find someone who speaks Romani to kind of translate to that. I mean, granted, the dude who could have probably helped with that did die. I mean, who knows? Because I'm sure she's also speaking like a very old version of that language, so it'd probably be rough to translate that anyway. I'm also curious, like, in her state that she's in now, it does still seem like her eyes she might still be blind. So interesting, because, like, some people, when they get turned back, they return to, like, their normal state, no injuries and stuff like that. But I guess in her case, it's a little, the rules are always, because it's still up in the air to the point, even, you know, Vanessa's not sure what would happen under those circumstances. She doesn't even know, like, what biting Dracula is going to do, if anything at all, so just a lot of interesting stuff to keep in mind. I'm interested to see where the next episode takes us. I'm going to be watching it immediately after I finish this recording, so yeah. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.